What's up, everybody? It's me. I'm back. I feel like returning to philosophy and metaphysics. We read most of that player's handbook, aside from the actual mechanics, which I think would make for a boring read. I think the lore is far more fun. When I get a computer, maybe I'll do more with it and stream stuff. I really want to become like a professional game master, so we'll see. But let's get back to this. Let's get back to Nietzsche. Let's get back to Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Last time we finished part 2. He had just finished with his apostles and all that stuff. And so now we are on the third part. And there's something I need really quick. Hold tight. There. Did I bring it with me already? I sure did. It's right there in the chair. Okay. All right. Here we go. My allergies are whooping my ass. I got all these cats around me and all this wind. All right. Thus spoke Zarathustra, the third part. You look up when you feel the need for elevation, and I look down because I am elevated. Who among you can laugh and be elevated at the same time? Whoever climbs the highest mountains laughs at all tragic plays and tragic seriousness. Zarathustra on Reading and Writing, page 152. So now we come back. Let's jump into this. The Wanderer. It was about midnight when Zarathustra started across the ridge of the island so that he might reach the other coast by early morning. For there he wanted to embark. There he would find a good roadstead where foreign ships too liked to anchor, and they often took along people who wanted to cross the sea from the Blessed Isles. Now, as Zarathustra was climbing the mountain, he thought how often since his youth he had wandered alone, and how many mountains and ridges and peaks he had already climbed. I am a wanderer and a mountain climber, he said to his heart. I do not like the plains, and it seems I cannot sit still for long. And whatever may yet come to me as destiny and experience will include some wandering and mountain climbing. In the end, one experiences only oneself. The time is gone when mere accidents could still happen to me. And what could come to me now, that was not mine already. And what could still come to me now that was not mine already? What returns, what finally comes home to me, is my own self. And what of myself has long been in strange lands and scattered among all things and accidents. And one further thing I know, I stand before my final peak now, and before that which has been saved up for me for the longest. Alas, now I must face my hardest path. Alas, I have begun my loneliest walk. But whoever is my kind cannot escape such an hour, the hour which says to him, only now are you going your way to greatness. Peak and abyss, they are now joined together. You are going your way, You are going your way to greatness. Now that which has hitherto been your ultimate danger has become your ultimate refuge. You are going your way to greatness. Now this must give you the greatest courage that there is no longer any path behind you. You are going your way to greatness. Here nobody shall sneak after you. Your own foot has effaced the path behind you, and over it there is written impossibility. And if you now lack all ladders, then you must know how to climb on your own head. How else would you want to climb upward? On your own head and away over your own heart. Now what was gentlest in you must still become the hardest. He who has always spared himself much will in the end become sickly of so much consideration. Praise be what hardens. I do not praise the land where butter and honey flow. One must learn to look away from oneself in order to see much. This hardness is necessary to every climber of mountains. But the lover of knowledge, who is obtrusive with his eyes, how could he see more of all things than their foregrounds? But you, O Zarathustra, wanted to see the ground and background of all things. Hence you must climb over yourself, upward, up, until even your stars are under you. Indeed, to look down upon yourself, and even upon my stars, that alone I should call my peak. That has remained for me as my ultimate peak. Thus spoke Zarathustra to himself as he was climbing, comforting his heart with his hard maxims. For his heart was sore as never before. And when he reached the height of the ridge, behold, the other sea lay spread out before him, and he stood still and remained silent a long time. But the night was still cold at this height, and clear and starry bright. I recognize my lot, he finally said sorrowfully. Well, I am ready. Now my ultimate loneliness has begun. Alas, this black sorrowful sea below me. Alas, this pregnant nocturnal dismay. Alas, destiny and seal to you I must now go down. Before my highest mountain I stand, and before my longest wandering. To that end I must first go down deeper than ever I descended, deeper into pain than ever I descended, down into its blackest flood. Thus my destiny wants it. Well, I am ready. Whence comes the highest mountains? I once asked. Then I learned that they come out of the sea. The evidence is written in their rocks and in the walls of their peaks. It is out of the deepest depth that the highest must come to its height. Thus spoke Zarathustra on the peak of the mountain, where it was cold. But when he came close to the sea, and at last stood alone among the cliffs, he had become weary and walking, and even more full of longing than before. Everything is still asleep now, he said. Even the sea is asleep, drunk with sleep, and strange it looks at me, but its breath is warm, and is warm that I feel. And I also feel that it is dreaming. In its dreams it tosses on hard pillows. Listen, listen, how it groans with evil memories, or evil forebodings. Alas, I am sad with you, you dark monsters, and even annoyed with myself for your sake. Alas, that my hand does not have strength enough. Verily, I should like to deliver you from evil dreams. And as Zarathustra was speaking As Zarathustra was speaking thus, he laughed at himself in melancholy and bitterness. What, Zarathustra, he said, would you sing comfort even to the sea? Oh, you loving fool, Zarathustra, you are trust over full. But thus have you always been. You have always approached everything terribly trustfully. You have wanted to pet every monster, a whiff to warm breath, a little soft tuft on the paw, and at once you were ready to love and to lure it. Love is the danger of the loneliest. Love of everything if only it is alive. Laughable, verily, are my folly and my modesty in love. Thus spoke Zarathustra, and he laughed for the second time. But he recalled his friends whom he had left, and as if he had wronged them with his thoughts, he was angry with himself for his thoughts. And soon it happened that he who had laughed wept. From wrath and longing, Zarathustra wept bitterly. We're going to read a little bit more, because that looks like that's kind of the intro, and now we're in the actual start of part 3. So, this says, on the vision and the riddle. When it got abroad among the sailors that Zarathustra was on board, from another man from the blessed isles had embarked with him, there was much curiosity and anticipation. But Zarathustra remained silent for 2 days, and was cold and deaf from sadness, and answered neither glances nor questions. But on the evening of the second day, he opened his ears again. That was strange and dangerous to be heard on this ship, which came from... let me see, why did I read that wrong? He opened his ears again, although he still remained silent, for there was much that was strange and dangerous to be heard on this ship, which came from far away and wanted to sail even farther. But Zarathustra was a friend of all who travel far and do not like to live without danger. And behold, eventually his own tongue was loosened as he listened, and the ice of his heart broke. Then he began to speak thus: to you, the bold searchers, researchers, and whoever embarks with cunning sails on terrible seas, to you, drunk with riddles, glad of twilight, whose soul flutes lure astray to every whirlpool, because you do not want to grope along a thread with a cowardly hand, and where you can guess, you hate to deduce. To you alone I tell the riddle that I saw, the vision of the loneliness. Not long ago I walked gloomily through the deadly parlor of dusk, gloomy and hard, with lips pressed together. Not only one sun had set for me, a path that ascended defiantly through stones, maliciously lonely, not cheered by herb or shrub, a mountain path crunched under the defiance of my foot. Striding silently over the mocking clatter of pebbles, crushing the rocks that made it slip, my foot forced its way upward. Upward, defying the spirit that drew it downward toward the abyss, the spirit of gravity, my devil and archenemy. Upward, although he sat on me, half dwarf, half mole, lame, making lame, dripping lead into my ear, leadening thoughts into my brain. "O Zarathustra," he whispered mockingly, syllable by syllable, "you philosopher's stone. You threw yourself up high, but every stone that is thrown must fall. O Zarathustra, you philosopher's stone, you sling stone, you star crusher. You threw yourself up so high, but every stone that is thrown must fall. Sentenced to yourself and to your own stoning, O Zarathustra. Far indeed have you thrown the stone, but it will fall back on yourself." Then the dwarf fell silent, and that lasted a long time. His silence, however, oppressed me, and such twosomeness is surely more lonesome than being alone. I climbed, I dreamed, I thought, but everything oppressed me. I was like one sick womb whom his wicked torture makes weary, and who, as he falls asleep, is awakened by a still more wicked dream. But there is something in me that I call courage, that has so far slain my every discouragement. This courage finally bade me to stand and speak. "Dwarf, it is you or I. For courage is the best slayer, courage which attacks, for in every attack there is plane and brass. Man, however, is the most courageous animal, hence he overcame every animal. With plane and brass he has so far overcome every pain, but human pain is the deepest pain. Courage also slays dizziness at the edge of the abysses. And where does man not stand at the edge of abysses? In not seeing always, seeing abysses, courage is the best slayer. Courage slays even pity, but pity is the deepest abyss. As deeply as man sees into life, he also sees into suffering. Courage, however, is the best slayer. Courage which attacks, which slays even death itself, for it says, "Was that life? Well then, once more." In such words, however, there is much plane and brass. He that has ears to hear, let him hear. "Stop, dwarf," I said. "It is I or you, but I am the stronger of us two. You do not know my abysmal thoughts, that you could not bear." Then something happened that made me lighter, for the dwarf jumped from my shoulder, being curious, and he crouched on a stone before me. But there was a gateway just where we had stopped. "Behold this gateway, dwarf," I continued. "It was two faces, two paths meet here. No one has yet followed either to its end. This long lane stretches back for an eternity, and the long lane out there, that is another eternity. They contradict each other. These paths, they offend each other face to face, and it is at that gateway that they come together. The name of the gateway is inscribed above, Moment. But whoever would follow one of them on, farther and farther, do you believe, dwarf, that these paths contradict each other eternally?" "All that is straight lies," the dwarf murmured contemptuously. "All truth is crooked. Time itself is a circle." "You spirit of gravity," I said angrily, "do not make things too easy for yourself, or I shall let you crouch where you are crouching, lamefoot, and it was I that carried you to this height. Behold," I continued, "this moment from this gateway, Moment, a long eternal lane leads backward. Behind us lies in eternity. Must not whatever can walk have walked on this lane before? Must not whatever can happen have happened, have been done, have passed by before? And if everything has been there before, what do you think, dwarf, of this moment? Must not this gateway too have been there before? And are not all things knotted together so firmly that this moment draws after its all that is to come, therefore itself too? For whatever can walk in this long lane out there, it must walk once more. And this slow spider which crawls in the moonlight, and this moonlight itself, and I and you in the gateway, whispering together, whispering of eternal things, must not all of us have been there before. And return walk and return and walk the other lane, out there before us, in this long, dreadful lane. Must we not internally return? Thus I spoke, and more softly, for I was afraid of my own thoughts, and the thoughts behind my thoughts. Then suddenly I heard a dog howl nearby. Had I ever heard a dog howl like this? My thoughts raced back. Yes, when I was a child, in the most distant childhood, then I heard a dog howl like this, and I saw him too, bristling his head up, trembling in the stillest midnight, when even dogs believe in ghosts. And I took pity, for just then the full moon, silent as death, passed over the house. Just then it stood still, a round glow, still on the flat roof, as if on another's property. That was why the dog was terrified, for dogs believe in thieves and ghosts, and when I heard such howling again, I took pity again. Where was the dwarf gone now? Or where was the dwarf gone now? And the gateway, and the spider, and all the whispering. Was I dreaming then? Was I waking up? Among wild cliffs I stood suddenly, bleak, in the bleakest moonlight. But there lay a man, and there the dog, jumping, bristling, whining. Now he saw me coming. Then he howled again. He cried. Had I ever heard a dog cry like this for help? And verily, what I saw, I had never seen the like. A young shepherd I saw, writhing, gagging in spasms, his face distorted, and a heavy black snake hung out of his mouth. Had I ever seen so much nausea and pale dread on one face? He seemed to have been asleep when the snake crawled into his throat, and there bit itself fast. My hand tore at the snake and tore in vain. It did not tear the snake out of his throat. Then it cried out of me, bite, bite its head off, bite. Thus it cried out of me, my dread, my hatred, my nausea, my pitying, all that is good and wicked in me cried out of me with a single cry. You bold ones who surround me, you searchers, researchers, and whoever among you has embarked with cunning sails on unexplored seas, you who are glad of riddles, guess me this riddle that I saw then. Interpret me the vision of the loneliest, for it was a vision and foreseen. What did I see then in a parable? And who is it must yet come one day? Who is the shepherd into whose throat the snake crawled thus? Who is the man into whose throat all this, the heaviest and blackest, will crawl thus? The shepherd who, however, bit as my cry counseled him. He bit with a good bite. Far away he spewed the head of the snake, and he jumped up. No longer shepherd, no longer human, one changed, radiant, laughing. Never yet on earth has a human being laughed as he laughed. Oh, my brothers, I heard a laughter that was no human laughter, and now a thirst gnaws at me, a longing that never grows still. My longing for this laughter gnaws at me. Oh, how do I bear to go on living? How could I bear to die now? Thus spoke Zarathustra. We'll stop there. What I want to say about this snake hanging from this man's mouth that almost killed him, and this man laughing, and him saying that he awoke up more than a man. For many of you guys who don't study philosophy and stuff, a good movie that I played my part being a cringe lord and edge lord about it, but dissects a lot of these concepts and themes and shows them to you is Fight Club. And the very premise here that you're hearing about of the man cheering, he bit the head off the snake, he thought he was going to die, he spit the head out, he laughed his ass off and found a new zest for life. It's the same concept of when Brad Pitt robbed that guy or held that guy at gunpoint and told him to go back to college, to go back to do stuff. And when Edward Norton's like, what the hell's wrong with you? He goes, tomorrow that man is going to wake up and have the most exhilarating rush of life ever that he is going to be because of this encounter with death. It's kind of that same concept. There's a lot more going on to it. There's a lot more to the fact that they used a snake, they used an image of blackness. You know that Nietzsche was very critical of Christianity and he liked to use its images, and Nietzsche would influence Carl Jung, and Carl Jung too was very big on religion. Next part of this part 3 is wherein it's actually, it's called On Involuntary Bliss. And we'll read that. Let's see, how long is part 3? What beast are we getting to? Oh, there's a fourth part. Part 3 looks to be possibly the shortest part. I think the first part was the longest part for us. Yeah, this third part's about 120 pages. Okay, this will be fun. It feels good. It feels good to be reading this. Thank you guys for listening to me. Please share. Please like. If you have feedback, if you have comments, if you have your own interpretations, let me know, guys. I appreciate it. Peace and much love, suckers.